Hi CSU students, welcome back. This is Recitation 11, Remote Learning Style. We are talking today about CERC. So I'm going to share a few things with you that I think will be helpful to hear versus just see in the slides. And then I'll explain your extended learning tasks and leave you with some time to work on those for the week. Okay. So a couple of reminders before I move ahead is that lab reflection number 9 is due Monday, April 20th by 11:59 p.m. That will relate to this week's lesson around CERC, stands for Claim, Evidence, Reasoning, Conclusion. Also, it's hard to see because of the stop sharing video screen. So underneath it is another reminder that next week is actually our last recitation. So be looking for that next Thursday. You'll have one final lab reflection, that's reflection 10, and then we'll also explain what the following week looks like with the case study. So I'm going to actually go into that right now. The case study assignment is your last assignment for recitation. This will be due on Thursday, April 30th, and you actually post that to Canvas. If you click here, you can actually look closer at the assignment and rubric. So this I've included in the slides this week if you want to review them even more and ask Natalie and I questions. Basically, the case study, let's say that later. The case study reflection paper is really a chance for you to think back on what the content of this course has meant for you in terms of your beliefs around teachers being teachers of literacy. That's part 1. If you remember back to the beginning of the semester, we had you do the literacy autobiography, and you actually did some thinking with this question back then. Feel free to pull that up and reread your response to the question at the beginning of the semester when you talked about whether you believed all teachers are teachers of literacy. Now, using everything you've learned this semester, we want you to respond to the statement again. Use evidence based on some of your experiences, both in the classrooms, in teachers' classrooms, through the lab, through recitation, any of those. Stories, narratives, real-life examples from this semester to help you share whether those beliefs are still the same or whether they've been expanded or changed at all through your experiences. So that's part 1. Part 2 is content area application. Now, this is where we wanted to give you a chance to get really specific with how you could use some strategies in your class someday. So you're going to choose 3 strategies that you've learned this semester in recitation. That is where, let me give you a quick example of what I mean by strategies. This slide, if you look over here, each of these items that I'm pointing to with my cursor, those are strategies that we have taught at some point during this recitation class. We have not done give one, get one yet. That will be next week's, but the rest of them we have gone over at some point this semester. You need to choose any 3 of these that you want to focus on for this particular case study. So with that, you're going to create a student sample that you could use in your future classroom and complete it so that we can see what it might look like if completed by a student. And for each of those, then you would write a paragraph to go along with it that explains the lesson or the focus for when you would use that strategy, and also an explanation of why you think that would be helpful for students in a way that you've chosen to use it. Now, this might sound a little bit like what we've asked you to do in the final question of lab reflections, but this is a lot more detailed, which is why we're only asking you to do 3 strategies, because we're asking you to do more with it. Here's what I mean by that too. If I go back to the case study assignment, I've also posted, Natalie and I decided to share with you a sample. This is a student who gave us permission to share their work with you. And you can see an example of a case study from a previous semester that was turned in. Part 1 is there. And then part 2, you'll notice, or part 1 was the reflection by the student. Part 2 is are the 3 examples. So you'll see the student chose to do a see, think, wonder, but they actually completed it as if they were in the class and doing the lesson. And then here's the paragraph describing the strategy. Here is a second skill or strategy. You'll see it's raft. This is an example as if a student filled it out, and then a paragraph explaining the context and how it could be helpful someday. The last one, called Give One, Get One, we haven't gone over yet, but you'll still see this is the choice of the student to have used that. And, oops, sorry, that's a little bit, looks like it got a little messed up in the transfer, but if you open the slides and if you click Open with Google Docs, it should give you, if I'm looking closer, yeah, it should actually give you a better view of that assignment if you open it in Google Docs. Okay, so I'll let you play with that if you want to look at the example. If you feel confident about the expectations without looking through the sample, that's fine, but we included it there just in case. Also in the case study, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to see how it will be graded. This is the rubric here. You'll see part 1 is worth a total of 20 points because there's 2 areas in which we'll be grading it. Part 2 then is worth 20 points. Because you'll see here, we're looking for the creation of the samples and then the written reflections for each of the 3. And then parts 1 and 2, writing skills, worth 10 points for the writing itself. Okay. Questions about the case study, please ask us before it's due. Right now, let's see. You'll be watching this this week, which is April 16th, I believe. So you'll still have half of the month of April before this is due, and you're welcome to check in if you guys have questions for us about the case study. Okay? So let's move on to today's learning targets. We want to be able to share with you what claim, evidence, and reasoning means, even though you might be able to do some of that. You might be able to figure that out already, but we're going to show you some examples of how this is used in classrooms. Also, we want you to have a chance to make a claim and support it with evidence and reasoning as part of your extended learning task today. So you'll notice back in the course themes or strategies, this is where this might fit in. Claim, evidence, and reasoning would be a way to help students synthesize and organize information. Okay. We also call this CERC, C-E-R-C. This is a format for helping kids with evidence-based answers. And you might even have remembered seeing this poster posted in my classroom at Preston. This poster is in a ton of different classrooms, science classrooms, social studies classrooms. And the reason is because at Preston, we use the language of CERC for students to actually remember this across content areas. So when they think of CERC in an English class and they see that word again in science, they are able to make the connections to how this can be a way that they think and give evidence-based answers, not just in one classroom, but in many. So here's how I would describe it. A claim, you'll notice the stoplight colors too for students. That's really like, here's where I'm going. So go. This is where I'm headed. A claim is when we make a statement or draw a conclusion that answers a question or problem. Then, and when you make that statement, you back it up with evidence. So now I'm going to slow down, get it, the yellow light. We're going to slow down and actually support our claim with words, scientific data, maybe textual evidence that you found in an article, but the evidence needs to be appropriate and sufficient to supporting whatever claim it is you're sharing. When you give evidence, it's also important that you stop and explain. So red means stop. This would be where you, as the writer, justify how your evidence connects to your claim or shows like why that evidence is showing or proving your claim. And then CER all by itself can still work, but if we're asking for students to give more of an extended writing response, we often add the C at the end, meaning back to go again, like here's where we were headed with this. We conclude by tying the main points together and try to leave the reader thinking about our topic. Let me give you a couple of quick reasons why this matters in all content areas. This is from the Common Core State Standards. You'll notice that in ELA or literacy, we are asking kids to read closely, which we've practiced already, but also to cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking, and that actual evidence supports the things we are saying about the text. Also, we're asked to have students write arguments to support claims and give valid reasoning and relevant and sufficient evidence. So you hear those words, that the terms claim, evidence, and reasoning are very much based upon the standards in which we teach and in which literacy lives in all content areas. So we have to make sure that we're using common language among our different content areas. I'm going to be pretty quick with these, but I want to point out that CERC can be a kind of formulaic at times if you're just teaching it for the first time to students, but it also can be used in a variety of ways. So this is a quick example of how you might do a sentence starter and ask students to do a very basic, short constructed response. In other words, they're not writing a whole essay about a topic, but you are asking them to respond by making a claim and then giving at least one piece of evidence and one statement of reasoning to go with it. So here's where students would maybe read an article and then had to post or complete a response where they gave a title of the article and then had to answer, almost fill in the blank with this. Their claim, I'll show you on the next page, would be like, or the question they're answering is, what quality does the article demonstrate? The good quality this article demonstrates is, and then you'd see the student chose a specific quality and actually now has to prove it. So generosity, there's the claim. Here's their evidence. In the text, it says, you'll notice then they quoted the text. And then following with reasoning, this shows the quality generosity because, and then they give their reasoning. So that's a simple example of using claim, evidence, and reasoning to write a response or speak a response about something that you're doing. Here's a brief example of a rubric that is used in multiple content areas. In fact, at Preston Middle School, we created this as a whole staff a few years ago. And this is one of the ways in which we look at some work across content areas when we're looking at how students are making claims in different ways and supporting it with evidence and reasoning. So a 4 would be the highest score they can earn. And you see that sometimes they have a really strong claim possibly, but maybe their textual evidence was not as strong. So they would have earned a different score here or here. Or maybe they had all of these, but never concluded. And so it just doesn't exist. A conclusion doesn't exist. But this would be a way to give them feedback about how they're doing. So here's what you're going to do today or this week, okay? We have 2 parts to the extended learning task, and the first one is a video lesson study. This video is from a science teacher, I believe it's a biology teacher, with her 9th grade class, and you'll have a chance to see how she uses claim, evidence, and reasoning in a biology class, but especially pay attention to how she's introducing this language and using it to support student thinking and learning. After you watch the video, we want you to try something with it. Not with the video, but kind of a different way of looking at CERC. Part 2 of this is going to be more your chance to play around with CERC and see how it helps you in some of your noticings about cell phones in schools. This is a hot topic for current and incoming teachers. How do we handle technology in classrooms, and what's the best answer? And I don't have that for you today. We want you to do some digging. And we want you to think about CERC as a way to help you share your position or your claim about what you think should be allowed in schools or not. So here's what we want you to do for part 2. You're going to think about this question of should cell phones be allowed in schools, and write a statement using CERC, claim, evidence, reasoning, conclusion, that takes your position, whether you think cell phones should be allowed or not. I've included a handout to make it easier if you need a template or a format. So you could open this and go over here to File, Make a Copy, and then make your own copy of this to type into. then you could just share that with us. Or you can just use this as a way to kind of see what we're thinking. You're going to have a chance to make a claim and try to come up with some evidence that backs your claim. Remember, textual evidence is the best kind of evidence right now, and that can be a video or it can be a text. It can be really any type of media can still be considered textual evidence. Then support your reasoning and analysis as well. Here's the thing though. You can include evidence. It's important to, but it's okay if you want to go find your own evidence. We've provided two items over here. One is a video clip from CNN and another is an article from Scholastic. And this is something you could choose to view and actually use as evidence if you don't want to search for your own. You also might not be sure if your position is in support of or against cell phones in schools. So it's okay if you want to do a little bit of searching for what other teachers and research is saying, and maybe think about this as you're trying to make that decision. Okay. So then when you're ready, you're going to go to the the lab reflection for the week. And in question number 3, where it asks you to complete the extended learning task, you're going to do these 2 things. Number 1, answer this question after watching the video lesson. What are some of the teacher moves that you noticed that the teacher made that you think helps students use CERC in their biology class? You can also share any other thoughts from that viewing. And then number 2 is, what do you think about the idea of allowing cell phones in schools? This will be where you share your statement that you create using CERC. And again, you can either just write it out or you can use the handout provided and then just put that in linked to this question in your lab reflection. Okay. Hopefully I explained that well enough, but if not, please email Natalie or Joy anytime this week. We'd be happy to connect. We also want you to keep thinking about some implications for teaching using CERC and how could you see this living in your own content area, especially sometimes content areas that you think outside the box with this. When would you have to have a student make a position or a statement about something and back it up? Also, when you are finished today, think about how it went for you with the learning targets. Are you feeling like at this point you can define the terms claim, evidence, and reasoning? And do you feel confident, more comfortable making your own claims and supporting it with evidence and reasoning? All right, students, we hope you're doing really well. I'm recording this right now as it's snowing outside, and I'm kind of ready for some warmer weather right now. We hope you are taking care of yourselves as well, staying safe, healthy, and we're here if you need anything. Take care.